You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Hello, this is Force 13 Live, and we are currently tracking Tropical Storm Barry, which formed in the Gulf of Mexico earlier today. It's currently got winds, we're putting at 45 miles per hour with that pressure estimate of 1003 millibars. The breaking news is that a hurricane warning has been issued in the last few minutes for, I think it was Intracoastal City to Grand Isle, Louisiana, moving me onto the screen properly there. Hello, my name is Nathan Foy, and I'm here with you for however long that we may be here for tonight. It's going to be coverage that might extend throughout a large part of this evening here on Force 13 Live. There is a lot to cover. It's very hectic right now. I'm not sure whether the bar on the left hand side is working properly, but we'll get to fix that sooner or later. Let's introduce our live team right now. Let's try and get that up, fading that up somewhere. We have a lot of people in here right now. Let's first say hello to Thomas. Thomas, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about Nathan?
Not too bad. You were taking up the coverage in the last 2 evenings, and it's nice to have you back again. Are you showing us that imagery right now?
I am, yeah.
All right, let's take that. Tell us what we're looking at here.
So this is obviously Tropical Storm Barry, and for those, whether you have a keen eye or not, you can tell it doesn't really look very much like a hurricane or anything, and it probably, we're not even sure if it's going to get to hurricane status at this point, but you can see all the convection has been pushed to the south due to shear from a upper level ridge. There's also dry air that's also coming into the system, so this is going to make it struggle as it does head up towards Louisiana at this but it still could strengthen a good, as it does have very warm sea surface temperatures and a unstable surface to work with. So
it sure does. We're also joined by Hank this evening. Hello.
Hello.
And it's nice to see you here again. Not too far. I think you might be the closest person to this store. One of.
Tomorrow night I will be flying over said storm on my way to Florida. So yeah.
Wow. That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Also in Texas right now is Isaac. Hello, Isaac.
Hello.
How are you today?
Doing good. Kind of hot over here today, but nothing that Texas can't handle.
Certainly. I think we're also now just joined by Nelson as well. Are you there? Nelson is in New Orleans and experienced the flooding that occurred there yesterday. If he does appear at some point, then feel free to chip in. We're also joined by David. Hello, David.
Hi, Nathan. Good to be here. And for our viewers, we're also streaming on Facebook.
Indeed we are. And we are also joined by Ethan.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Hope you're having a great day over there.
I am. It's pretty hot here.
And also Ryan. Good evening to you.
Hello.
Afternoon still, actually.
It's kind of evening. I mean, it's 4 o'clock. Yeah, it's basically still the afternoon.
Kinda. All right.
Yeah.
We are in a big mess here right now because things have been thrown together at the last minute because the National Hurricane Center did their update literally 2 minutes before we started the show. So we're trying to fix up everything on the left-hand side of our image to try and get our graphics looking nice, and hopefully you'll be able to see more things there as well once that starts to work properly. In the meantime, we're just going to continue to look at that imagery on the screen. I don't know if anyone wants to take over at that point to tell us what's going on in the picture.
Okay, so I guess I will do so, considering that I have been making pretty frequent analysis videos on this channel, just basically kind of, I guess for some people, just breaking down the meteorological aspects of all this. So it's, you just look at it and you say gross, because that's correct. It is not a very well-defined cyclone right now, and it likely never will be. But what is going to be something that we're going to have to monitor is the exact surface structure of this. You can see it's very hard to see on the imagery that Thomas is showing, considering that it's infrared. So let me see if I could get my my screen share going so I can get some visible imagery up.
We're just
on here.
throwing ourselves around trying to get anything on the screen right now.
Okay, so
visible.
Okay, so I have non-tidbits imagery, good imagery on my screen right now. Yeah, I just like tidbits imagery. Anyways, so this is the true color imagery of Barry right now. You can see all this convection based off and laced towards the south. But you can also notice here that the northern section is very dry, but that allows us to actually see more of the structure of the surface center. You can see some mesovortices in here, one just moving over the Mississippi River Delta right now, one that's starting to emerge out here just to the southeast of such, and then one that's also emerging out of the convection, all rotating up, and another one in here that is supposed to be the dominant center. And all that is rotating about a center of circulation right here that is still relatively, but is starting to become a little bit better defined with time. And that is because there's a lot more convection that is being persistent, and the persistence of the convection is very important, because if it remains persistent for a longer period of time, then that means the surface flow is going to actually start to reorganize again, and then it may actually start to loop around a little bit. The other issue with this is that the surface center is actually elongated a little bit from northeast to southwest, and that is going to something else. And once that starts to rotate over a little bit more, once the northern end of the major axis approaches that of the Mississippi River Delta, then that's going to concentrate vorticity more and could allow more convection to fire as we approach the more of the diurnal maximum right now, and that could allow for further intensification of the system. Right now, it's not currently forecast to reach hurricane intensity as been posted.
Yes, that is also something very important to note, that just in this advisory in the last few minutes, they have revised the peak intensity down below hurricane intensity, although they still say 70 miles an hour, and that's why they've gone ahead and put this hurricane warning in effect.
Yeah. So, and because it's just not as well organized as some of the models initially anticipated, but right now some of the models are more keen on seeing a strong tropical storm making landfall somewhere in southeastern Louisiana, and that would be occurring on Saturday morning. And the threat with that really isn't going to be wind or storm surge for that matter, but it's going to be by far rainfall, and that's going to be something that we're going to be talking about a lot on this hour, because that is going to be a huge threat for this area of the country.
Indeed. Sooner or later, the graphics on the left will start to update, hopefully very soon. I'm working on it. And that will show some rainfall estimates when we get it. What I can say right now is that currently we're saying New Orleans could even get 16 inches of rain from this storm in the next 5 days.
On top of what they already got yesterday from all that flash flooding.
It's quite an incredible number. Additionally, I can't quite remember what other places we're at now. I think Mobile might have been, or was it Gulfport, at 14 inches. But there's a large swathe along that zone that's currently expecting quite large amounts of rain.
Yeah, that is true. And most, if not all, weather models, at least the ones that I've seen so far, are all in pretty good agreement that in or very near to New Orleans, at least 10 inches of rain, with some of the more aggressive models getting over 20 inches in some cases. So very aggressive rainfall. But it's not out of the question. This is producing, like I said before, a lot of convection. And with a lot of convection, you're going to be getting a lot of rainfall as well. So
looking at some model runs here,
totals are pretty.
Yeah, I'm just looking at forecast rainfall totals right now from the GFS. This is one of the lower models actually, and it's predicting about 16 inches of rain from a swath that goes basically right through New Orleans, up through areas north of Gulf, and that's going to be laced basically near and east of the center. Because let me actually go back really quickly. and show you this from the GFS right here.
I wonder if we could possibly see like simulated satellite imagery for this, because it might detail how some of these areas are going to be right over.
Yeah, well, this will actually give you an idea of that, because this is going to be 500 millibar relative humidity right here.
All right.
You can see that. So basically, this is going to be the positioning at 12Z on Saturday, the sunrise Saturday morning around this part of the world. So this is going to be when it's making land southwest of New Orleans, not too far from Morgan City and Homa. And you can see here that a lot of the convection is based up towards the south and east of where the surface center is. And basically areas east of where it makes landfall are going to see the highest rainfall totals. You can see here Saturday afternoon right here. The surface center is well west of New Orleans, but all the moisture inflow from the Gulf of Mexico is being pumped right into the area. And in addition, you're also going to be seeing a lot of dry air on the west side, because you're blowing in some very dry continental air on the west side, and that's going to be sinking and drying out. So therefore, if you're in like Lafayette or Lake Charles on this run, you're probably not going to see a whole lot of rain. But if you're in New Orleans or areas in Mississippi or Alabama, or even the far western Florida Panhandle, you will likely be seeing some pretty hefty rainfall totals just from this alone. And then it would continue to occur as it progresses up through Mississippi, and then would likely continue even into early next week. It's possible, but rain chances begin to lower at that point.
We'll come back to that, Hank. I just want to see if Ethan wanted to share a graphic that he produced with some key messages on it.
Yes, that graphic right now is saying that Barry is forecast to make landfall in the western part of the hurricane warning area. I think that it's quite interesting that they issued it that far east, but as we've always been stating, flash flooding will be the main threat from this storm time after time again. However, also with this storm, winds about 50 to 80 mile per hour sustained with higher gusts are possible within the hurricane warning area. Moderate amounts of storm surge can also occur, and power outages will certainly be occurring on the coast.
How much storm surge could we be expecting from this?
I would say anywhere between 3 and 5 feet in some areas. I think that's what the National Hurricane Center graphic has as well. See if I can pull that.
Yeah, they're
I'd agree with
forecasting.
that.
They're forecasting about 3 feet for the most part, but in isolated parts. At least when I checked last night, isolated areas of up to 6 feet plus.
Yeah, so this is the graphic from the National Hurricane Center right here. Anywhere you see in the yellow right here, that's where you're going to expect about 3 feet of inundation from the storm, assuming that it makes landfall at the point where the National Hurricane Center anticipates, which is likely to be somewhere around the Morgan City area, or maybe even further east now. And anywhere that's going to be near and east of landfall point for that would see the highest surge. Anywhere in blue is greater than a foot. Anything greater than anything in yellow is going to be greater than 3 feet, and I don't see any oranges on here. And anything in orange would indicate greater than 6 feet. You can see the key down here. And anything in this kind of this hatched area is going to be where there are levees in place. You can see obviously New Orleans right here with their levee system, and then occasional ones throughout the bayous as well. And this is going to be something that we have to monitor very closely on top of all the rainfall, because there's going to be a lot of water being pumped in addition up the Mississippi River, which is in flood stage right now and is very swollen. And any extra rain, which is a guarantee to fall, any flooding rains that are going to fall are just going to exacerbate the issues along the Mississippi and could potentially have some sort of impact on the levees. Not saying they're going to breach or anything, but saying that there could be some sort of impact on here that need to be very closely monitored, just because of some upstream storm surge flooding and because of rainfall. Both of those things are going to act in tandem to kind of put these levees to the test, and hopefully we get out okay, but there's a possibility that, of course, something may go wrong. Not saying that's going to happen, but it is certainly a possibility in some of these areas.
All right. If you've got any questions for us whilst we're on the air tonight, send in a message. Type in Force 13. It'll tag us. And if you've got any questions, hopefully our team will be able to answer you on that. I think Ethan's showing us something now as well.
Yeah, this is the HRRR model, which is regarded as, for severe weather, one of the best models for forecasting where the storms will actually be. This model refreshes every hour, and it runs for 18 hours. You can see these last few hours haven't generated yet. But you can
Do
see
we put any stock
generally-
into that forecast? It's sort of like might be executing a bit of a loop there.
I mean,
Yeah, a little bit.
the HRRR isn't properly coupled to the ocean, so it's not really the best model to be going off for that sort of stuff. Really, any of the mesoscale models aren't really good to be going off. So
What it
yeah,
does
I wouldn't
note,
really put
what
too
it
much stock
does
into
note
those.
though, Hank, is that now that all of that thunderstorm activity passed through Louisiana yesterday, there's hardly anything left on the northern side of the whole storm, and that looks like it could remain the case for a little while.
Yes, because there is currently a lot of dry air and shear being impacted on the system because of the upper anticyclone, of which the storm would usually like to stack underneath to have very healthy outflow and intensify more. That's
So,
currently
Hank,
based over
We've seen.
Louisiana.
I'm sorry. We've seen so many times though where dry air and wind shear completely blows storms away. Storms like Barry. What's going to happen in order for it to actually get over it and strengthen?
What needs to happen is really two things. The first thing it needs to do is travel a little bit farther south than forecast. That would lower the shear, and that would get it farther away from some of the dry air that is being advected into the northern part of the semicircle. And that is because there is that ridge over Louisiana, Mississippi I was mentioning, the anticyclone, and also a bit of and that kind of extends up towards Virginia as well. And then there's also some upper troughs over Florida and off the Carolina coast. Those are helping to push some of this dry air in. So if it's a little bit farther to the south, then it gets a little bit farther away from all that and stacks underneath the mid-level center. So if it does two of those things, then it could be able to progress off towards the west and then intensify gradually more as it does so, because if it's a bit farther south, it's going to take longer for it to reach the Louisiana coast just because it's farther away. So it would have more time to strengthen. And it wouldn't likely get anything above minimal hurricane strength. That's probably the most that this thing is going to achieve. But either way you slice it, it's going to be kind of a lopsided system if it does make landfall. Even if it is a hurricane, it will still be lopsided. And it would also not be very, I mean, because of lopsided, it wouldn't be very
You
well
might hear some
organized.
weird noises here. There's some. I'm just going to turn notifications off because the sounds are all coming up on me for some reason. Okay. Enough of that madness. We're looking again at the satellite imagery right now. Who haven't we heard of who would like to speak next?
Guess I could go.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, it's still pretty disorganized, and it just hasn't been organizing as much as I would have expected it to be organized. Like, I'd expect at least, not like a super well-defined tropical storm, but like a tropical storm that could definitely a tropical storm that I guess has its act together is what I'm trying to say, and we're just not really seeing that.
Here is an animated loop, and you look on the infrared, there's not much sign of that center. I assume it's clearer on the visible, which I haven't looked at for a little while. Well, you were showing it just before. Okay, it's running really slowly. Let's move on to something else. Let's actually now go and turn this off and go through some of the panels that we did pre-arrange here. So this... Alright, let's scroll right back here. The National Hurricane Center's key messages. So this is as of 4 p.m. Central Time, so this is up to date. I'll just read this out just so that everyone knows where we stand with Tropical Storm Barry right now, according to the National Hurricane Center. There is a danger of life-threatening storm surge inundation along the coast of southern and southeastern Louisiana, where a storm surge warning is in effect. The highest storm surge inundation is expected between the mouth of the Atchafalaya... I was going to get that right before I started this stream, but I didn't. Atchafalaya River and Shell Beach. Residents in these areas should listen to any advice given by local officials. The slow movement of Barry will result in a long-duration heavy rainfall and flood threat, which is what we're most concerned about, along the central Gulf Coast and inland through the lower Mississippi Valley through the weekend into early next week. Flash flooding and river flooding will become increasingly likely, some of which may be significant, especially along and east of the track of the system. Hurricane conditions are expected along a portion of the coast of Louisiana. It's interesting that they say that even now. Now that they're no longer predicting a hurricane, they still say hurricane conditions are expected. and this is up to date, where a hurricane warning has been issued. Residents in these areas should rush their preparations to completion. That is certainly true, as tropical storm conditions are expected to arrive in the warning area by Friday morning. Just that graphical depiction of where that warning is right now. It's highlighted in red. That's the hurricane warning zone. The hurricane watch out on both sides of that, along with the tropical storm warning marked in blue, and the tropical storm watch in yellow, covering a large part, in fact possibly all of Mississippi into western Alabama. There's the earliest reasonable arrival time of tropical storm force winds. So in western Louisiana, where that landfall might occur, you're looking during the day, during the afternoon on Wednesday. Further east, you're looking at maybe Friday morning. And here is the chance of tropical storm force winds laid out on the chart. On the left-hand side, you can also see those numbers in actual data points. So that's also very helpful. So you can see what's expected there. I don't know if any of you guys have any input on what we've just seen out of all that.
Now, Nathan, I know that you were questioning why the National Hurricane Control were saying that hurricane conditions were expected.
Well,
What
I
I'm
did think,
thinking-
is it two 70-mile-an-hour points, and the point in between
Yeah.
it makes landfall and could be 75 miles an hour?
That's probably what the case is.
Here, I can take a look at the forecast discussion and find out.
Interesting. All right, let's see if we've got any questions. I know some have just gone by. If you do have any questions, just start your message with Force 13 all in text in the chat section. On satellite, it seems to be going southwest. Do we see this? Is it true?
Yes, it is currently true right now. I've been noticing that basically the center of rotation right now is beginning to shift towards the south just a little bit, and that's because there's a bit more of there's a bit of an older mesoscale system towards the west of Barry, and that's kind of what brought all that flooding to New Orleans yesterday. That has dropped southwest, and because of that, it's also kind of instigating a little bit more of an enhanced flow on the southwestern quadrant, and that is kind of dragging the actual circulation center a little bit more to the southwest than initially anticipated, and that is probably not going to be a huge, I guess, player in the intensity forecast unless it continues doing that throughout the next several hours. But it's certainly an interesting feature nonetheless because allowing it to stack a little bit more underneath that mid-level center.
Yep. All right, let's look at this now. This is the rainfall chart, and you can see how the National Hurricane Center have over 20 inches of rain now expected in parts of Louisiana. I know Thomas also has that up on a model run right now, so your thoughts?
So I have a large variety of weather models and their swaths of rain, and something that I think needs to be, I guess, observed here is that with every single one of these models, you can see this is the H-Wharf swath. You can see the swath on the NavGem, and you can see the swath on the GFS. But on all of these swaths, I think this was mentioned earlier, but you'll notice, and it's best depicted on the H-Wharf, because you can see that the cone of uncertainty is not really going to be an accurate representation of where the most rain is going to fall, hence their rainfall forecast. You can see here, at least in my opinion, quite clearly that it's all quite a bit to the east. I know, Hank, you were talking about earlier how dry air is probably going to be more dominant on the western side, so convection is going to be pushed over to the east and southeast. And so because of that, we're going to be seeing this move in, most of the rainfall occurring to its east, which really is bad news for places like New Orleans, who have already received, I think, over 9 inches of rain in localized areas in their metropolitan area, and 6 inches generally throughout there. So they could be receiving much more rain. So please make hurricane preparations. I know mandatory evacuations and voluntary evacuations have been ordered in the state of Louisiana. So just take those seriously. Don't take them lightly.
Yeah. Also to note is that I mentioned this a little earlier, but the Mississippi River is in flood stage right now, that far south. So any additional rainfall on top of all of the flooding that's already occurring along the Mississippi is obviously going to bring even worse. I guess it's going to impact the actual flooding situation down there a little bit more, in that it's going to be more severe because you just don't want any more rain running into that river right now, just because of how swollen it is at the moment, and that's just going to exacerbate issues now.
Yes, indeed, and also to make a note here, another of the graphics that they have up, the risk of flash flooding, which is 50% high over much of eastern Louisiana over the next 3 days. How often does that happen?
Pretty rarely. The last time that happened was in Houston, associated with the remnants of 91L, and that was a pretty significant flooding event on its own right.
Yeah, and you can see there most of that threat is on day 3. Saturday into Sunday. Alright, let's see what else we've got here. That is slightly out of date now, but those are some satellite loops. These were some models from earlier, so you can see how, I know a lot of those are statistical models, but there is still quite a bit of uncertainty about where exactly this storm is going to make landfall.
Yeah, but it has been trending further east, though.
And that is also
Generally.
interesting. We were talking about maybe even into Texas initially, but now we're looking at eastern Louisiana, and 1 or 2 GFS runs in the last 2 days took it into Mississippi, didn't it? And one other did earlier today, didn't it?
Yep. And that's all because the system isn't quite as well organized today as it initially was anticipated to, and it doesn't really have a solidified core. Some of the models were saying earlier this week that if the storm got stronger, then it would be able to progress farther west because there's going to be a frontal boundary sweeping through that's going to try and nudge it poleward. But once the storm is a little stronger, it has more of a feel on more layers of the troposphere, rather than if it's weaker, it's going to feel this flow at the surface. And the frontal flow is just mainly the surface flow and up towards about 700 millibars. So in that case, then the storm, if it's weaker, it would curve north earlier. But if it was stronger, it would have probably kept going closer towards the Texas-Louisiana border. But in this case, because it's still weak and larger than initially forecast, that kind of solution has been getting more and more off the table with time, and now the models are becoming a lot more certain that it's going to be portions of eastern Louisiana that see the eventual landfall and highest impacts from the system.
As we look now at the full picture across the Atlantic, you may also notice a 10% chance for Invest 93L in the low latitude part of the eastern Atlantic. Keeping it brief on this because I think that's all it really deserves at this point. Any thoughts?
It's just not going to form, I don't think. I mean, we're in July, and we still have lots of Saharan air over the main development region. And so really tropical waves like this don't start to form until around early to mid-August. And then by late August into September, we obviously know that these become a lot more common. But right now, for a storm like this to develop would be very unlikely. And if it were to do so, it would be very weak and short.
All right.
The main thing that's... sorry.
Sure. Go ahead.
The main thing that's really helping this actually be an invest, per se, is just because of how low latitude it is. Over time, it's going to speed up, and when the storm speeds up, that means that any surface organization that it has, any surface wave is just going to flatten out, and therefore it wouldn't be lowering pressures, so convection would die off, and it would just become basically a big fat nothing as it progresses off towards the southern Caribbean Sea with time.
All right, and whatever happened to this July East Pacific hurricane train? There was 2 and Cosme, and now very little. There's a 10% chance for this system here, but it doesn't look like it's going to form.
That has indeed been designated as Invest 96E just now.
It's just been designated, did you say?
Yes, as 96E.
Well, there we are. Breaking news. Invest 96E has just been designated, and you're looking at it on the screen. Low chance of development, though. Models are against it at the minute in general. The Central Pacific also very quiet. And everywhere else in the world, which leaves us just with Barry, which is our main feature on tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. Is it? This isn't a tropical weather, but you see what mode I'm in now. Tropical weather bulletins all the time. You could say this is one, but it isn't branded as such. This is our coverage of Tropical Storm Barry. A hurricane warning has been issued. If you missed it, at the start of this hour, a hurricane warning in effect for the coast of Louisiana from Intracoastal City to Grand Isle. A tropical storm warning in effect from Lake Pontchartrain and Lake Maurepas, including metropolitan New Orleans. And also for the Louisiana coast west of Intracoastal City to Cameron, a storm surge watch in effect for Lake Pontchartrain. Those are the changes. So all the other warnings that were in effect remain so as well. There's a look at Invest 98W, by the way, in the Western Pacific, which could develop later on this week, but not just yet. Alright, let's get back. Let's actually look at that storm surge graphic that someone is showing.
That would be me.
So you can see there the extent of the storm surge watches and warnings. I can tell you those as well if I can pronounce it without messing up again. A storm surge warning for the mouth of the Atchafalaya River to Shell Beach, and a storm surge watch for Shell Beach to the Mississippi-Alabama border, the mouth of the Atchafalaya River to Intracoastal City and Lake Pontchartrain. Also, a note, a hurricane watch in effect for the mouth of the Mississippi River to Grand Isle and Intracoastal City to Cameron, and a tropical storm watch for the east of the mouth of the Pearl River to the Mississippi-Alabama border. If you've got any more questions for us, please send them in. We'll take some more just in a moment. Yeah, so let's do that now if we can. I'm getting there. Alright, we had some more questions. That's a partial question that someone didn't seem to finish. Did the North Indian Ocean cyclone season finish? A bit of an odd question. It's probably a lot more to come.
Well, here's the thing. There's usually like a break in the season. Actually, it's always happened. There's like it's active in like April, May, June, and then it's just takes like a 2-week break in July and August and into September.
2-month break.
2-month break, really, yeah. And then as you get into like then October, November, that's like the second part of the season. It's
the main peak.
I think it is the main peak, right?
Yeah, it is.
All right. What will happen to the algae in Mississippi and Louisiana?
It's just gonna get worse.
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, it's never a good thing to have a storm blowing up about all of that. We also received a notification that Mission 5 from NOAA is happening. Any recon news?
Well, I have my recon source loaded up right now. Let's.
You're there already? Alright, let's have a look.
Yep, let's take a look and see. Alright, there it is. Alright, let me just zoom out here and see where they are. So they haven't intercepted the center quite yet. They're just kind of surrounding it right now. But it appears that they're finding some 25 knot winds, but those are pretty far away from the center itself. So this thing is probably going to take a dive down into the storm and get some pressure readings and all that. And we'll see exactly what they find. And they'll probably find a little bit of a deeper center and a little base further out towards the southwest, and probably supporting a little bit of stronger of a system, but nothing that should be mind-blowing or anything like that.
Alright, so that's interesting to say the least. Let's see what else we've got here. Could Barry cause catastrophic flooding in Louisiana? It's already started, by the looks of things.
Say that. I don't know about catastrophic, but pretty significant flooding, yeah.
Well, yeah. Alright, and I'm sure that could be possible. I mean, it's not every day that you see 20 inches of rain, a big possibility or more.
Certainly not.
Alright, let's see. Any impact to Arkansas? That's another question that we received.
Arkansas?
Lots of rain.
Not even a whole lot of rain for Arkansas, because they're likely to be on the western end of this track. And while it would, I mean, mostly in eastern Arkansas.
You're still looking over 6 inches.
In Arkansas?
Yeah, they still have over 6 inches in the southeastern part.
Oh yeah, like far eastern Arkansas. But like most of the state shouldn't see too much rainfall. I mean, if you're closer towards the Mississippi River, then yes, your rainfall totals are likely to be a lot higher than if you were in, say, Fayette. But I wouldn't really think that. I mean, it just depends on where in the state you are. You can see anywhere from nothing to.
The corner of the state is under a 5% marginal risk of flash flooding.
Yeah.
All right. Hope that answers your question, wherever you might be in Arkansas. I think this question relates to tornado activity. Obviously, it's been in the news a lot throughout this tornado season. Will Barry add to that?
It could. I mean, anytime you have a landfalling tropical cyclone, you have the ingredients you need to produce tornadoes. You have strong rotation, and you have lift in the atmosphere, and you have the triggering mechanisms within the banding itself. So usually you do have some tornadoes on the eastern side of wherever the system makes landfall. The only thing is that those tornadoes are usually very weak and short-lived, but they also can move very quickly because they're in those bands that can move in very quickly as well. So they can cause damage, but they're usually not. They're not the plain supercells that you see when we're covering that sort of stuff in Oklahoma and Kansas. That's not that sort of stuff. It's just really weak spin-up tornadoes that may last, a few, and then they'll be gone.
Thomas, what are you showing us now?
So this is kind of, I guess, an overview or summary, if you will, of really everything related to the storm that does have a product issued on it. So it's got the best track. It's the cone, obviously, and it's got your rain accumulations. It doesn't have a very good key, so I can actually bring the actual graphic over here so you can see a good reference for a key. But you can see the pinks in there, 20 inches or so, and you can see it goes down to 15 inches. So if you're in the yellow, you're probably going to be getting more than 10 inches in the bright. You're over 6 inches in the darker yellows, and as you transition into the oranges and reds, you're going to be anywhere from around 2 to 5 inches. Either way, if you're in the red or farther in, you're going to be experiencing significant rainfall. But those pink areas there, especially very close to New Orleans, right, over 20 inches of rain can be expected. So it's going to be very dangerous. And again, regardless of how intense Barry gets, rain is going to be the primary threat with this. Obviously, the stronger the winds are, the worse it's going to be for coastal areas. But really, just in general, the rain threat is going to be the highest one by, and regardless of wind speed, that rain threat's probably going to remain about.
It's going to be what, sorry?
I said the threat, regardless of how fast the winds do get, is going to be rainfall and in this.
Flooding. Yeah, okay. More questions, maybe a little bit unrelated, but is there an El Nino or La Nina right now?
Neither.
It's
just a cold bias Enzo region right now.
What are the chances of a shift to the west?
Given that that's not too far out from landfall, probably pretty low at this point. Forecast confidence is increasing a lot with this right now.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me wonder whether, whether it might just, it is still very broad when you look at it. And I just, for some reason, am starting to get a little bit of similarities going along with, I think, Cindy of 2017, if I'm not mistaken.
I could see that a little bit.
Yeah.
But I say a little less crappy, but it's I could see where you're coming from with that. Origins are different, but I could see where you're coming from.
That's true, indeed. Some very weird questions that I probably won't read out. It's not going to rapidly intensify like Patricia, and it's not going to impact California. Moving on. Is there a possibility of it making a heavy landfall in the Texas-Louisiana border? I guess that depends on your definition of heavy. Do you think any landfall could happen on that border region now? Anyone?
It's pretty unlikely now.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I'd say it's not possible, but it's very unlikely.
Yeah. All right. You can send in more questions by sending a message. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. There's another one. How much feet of rain do you think Indiana will get if Barry gets there? It won't be feet.
Well, it won't be that.
Won't be in feet. Yeah. Let's have a look at what you see. It probably only a couple inches at the
Yeah.
Yeah. Only
Yeah,
a
weather
couple
prediction
inches.
center saying about 2 inches, maybe.
Yeah, 2 inches. So yeah.
But honestly, as me being from Indiana, that could honestly change in a heartbeat.
Obviously can, but it's kind of hard to say because I guess we're just gonna have to see exactly what Barry does. But really, we can give like an Indiana.
And I mean, that's longer range, and it's more than likely going to be post-tropical by then. It is going to be post-tropical by then. So rainfall could be just relatively widespread, and it could be almost like your typical rains. Could just be a little heavier, but I don't know. I feel like there's going to be too much rain falling outside of Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee, and maybe Kentucky and Missouri. Alabama maybe a little bit too, but I don't think it's going to up into Illinois or Indiana all that much.
All right. Another question here. What's the expected storm surge in Morgan City?
About 3 to 5 feet.
3 to 5 feet. And the chances of a western shift now is another question, slightly differently phrased.
Low.
Low percentage, maybe
Like very low.
10%.
Low chance. A
Like-
lot of people asking those kinds of questions right now. Now, is there
Very,
a chance
very
it will
low.
stall? That's another question here. You never know. It actually
No.
might stall right now.
If it were to stall, it wouldn't be over land, though. It would be
Yeah.
probably where it is now would be the most likely chance for it to quote-unquote stall. It's once it gets towards Louisiana, it's going to start picking up some forward momentum because of that front dripping in and the ridge building out near the Bahamas. But right now, I'd say is probably if it were to do it, then that's when it would. And unfortunately, it's over water, so it wouldn't be as significant because of that.
All right. There was a post there about evacuations, which reminded me that some places have been put under evacuation orders. Does anyone have the latest on that?
I don't have the latest, but I know Eastern. I believe it was Plaquemines Parish last night. People were ordered under a mandatory evacuation there for them to be leaving. I think they're supposed to leave by 6 in the morning or 8 in the morning, if I'm not mistaken. One of those two, but I know they had a mandatory evacuation for Eastern Plaquemines Parish, Louisiana. I don't know if they expanded it or not.
I heard about Grand Isle.
Interesting.
I'm not sure. I heard about that. Is David here? Does he have any information for us?
He's
No
in the-
information, Nathan,
All right. Well, I could have sworn that I heard that information.
but I'm checking.
Another question here. Do you ever think it will change its shape and get its act together?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to say if it will or it won't. Only the time will tell, but most of the models are indicated that it will get back together.
Yeah, it looks like organization is more likely than not at this point, at least better and improved organization. The problem with it's going to be that by the time it would really start to get its act together, it's going to be over land. So in the storm's eyes, it's not going to have enough time to really get going, to really look good. But that's good news for land areas, because if this had gone farther south or this strengthened maybe into a tropical storm last night, that would have been much more problematic and probably would have resulted in a much stronger storm. So, at least in this case, it's very good news that the storm will be headed towards land in a quick fashion instead of a slower one.
Yeah, also something to take into consideration is that once it does move on land, it's not just going to be hitting a coastline. This portion of coastline right here is very swampy and it's not really well defined. So that does mean it's sparsely populated, which is good, but that also means that if the storm gets a little bit further inland, it might not fall apart as quick as, say, if it were to move in somewhere inland, say, like in the Carolinas, for example, or even areas of the Texas coast. It's not going to immediately start weakening. It's probably going to take a little bit longer for it to do so, just because the area is just swampy and very marshy, and it's going to take longer for it to start to downgrade a little bit, and it's still going to be having that Gulf inflow,
Especially
even
if
while
it's
it is
moving
overland.
slowly.
Yes, yeah. So it's still going to be having that inflow on the east side, and there's still going to be a lot of rainfall over there. And if the storm is a little slower moving, I guess, then that would just exacerbate that. And then again, because the coastline isn't defined, it would just kind of move in, and then it would just kind of like level out of the point and then start dropping as it gets to progress further inland.
And I think another point here is that the models have, as far as I know, have been consistently calling for the storm to be intensifying right up until landfall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
can agree with that as well.
Which
Yeah,
doesn't
pretty
always
much.
happen in the Gulf.
Yeah, but it
No.
has happened. I mean, it's happened like I mean, it happened a lot last year.
I knew that was
Let's not draw
coming up.
those kinds of comparisons.
Yeah.
This is not going to be a Michael.
Yeah. The
Don't
difference
worry.
with the difference with this is that because it is July, it's still the summer months, so the water's a little bit warmer over here. They are a lot warmer than average already, but because it is July, it is kind of this time of the year where the waters aren't starting to cool yet. They're still kind of warming up a little bit. So because of that, the storms aren't going to immediately start weakening as they move inland, because it's not like when you get into late September and October when you get these troughs moving in, and it's usually start to weaken as they approach the coast. There are exceptions. And you note that some storms that have peaked at landfall are also August systems. Not saying that this will be anything like those two systems that I will not name, but it will be kind of in line that it will peak most likely around landfall just because of the time of year that it is right now.
All right.
And Nathan, I do have an update.
Okay.
You are correct. Officials in New Orleans itself declined to issue evacuation orders. Instead, recommended on Thursday that residents shelter in place, store up several days of supplies, move vehicles to higher ground. National Guard is now positioning around the area. The Louisiana's governor declared an emergency and said National Guard troops and high water vehicles will be positioned all over the state. The entire coast of Louisiana is at play in this storm. A spokesman for the Army Corps of Engineers in New Orleans said the agency is not expecting widespread overtopping of the levees, but there are concerns for areas south of the city. Mandatory evacuations were ordered for people living near the Mississippi River. I'm not going to attempt the
No,
parish name at Louisiana's southeastern tip, as well as the Gulf Barrier state of Grand Isle. The National Weather Service expects the river to rise to 20 feet, 6 metres by Saturday morning at a key gauge in New Orleans area, which is protected by levees 20 to 25 feet high.
Yep, and you can see on the left-hand side there that goes by every so often. 16 inches of rain expected in New Orleans itself, 14 inches in Gulfport, Mississippi, and 11 inches in Hattiesburg. Let's just read out the latest information right now. This is Force 13 Live. It's coming up to a 10 to 5 CDT Central Time. A hurricane warning is in effect for Intracoastal City to Grand Isle. A tropical storm warning for the mouth of the Pearl River to Grand Isle, Lake Pontchartrain and Lake Maurepas, including metropolitan New Orleans, and Intracoastal City to Cameron. A storm surge warning for the mouth of the Atchafalaya River to Shell Beach. A storm surge watch for Shell Beach to the Mississippi-Alabama border. The mouth of the Atchafalaya River to Intracoastal City and Lake Pontchartrain. A hurricane watch for the mouth of the Mississippi River to Grand Isle and Intracoastal City to Cameron. A tropical storm watch for east of the mouth of the Pearl River to the Mississippi-Alabama border. Rainfall, storm surge estimates The mouth of the Atchafalaya River to Shell Beach, 3 to 6 feet for that region. Shell Beach to the Mississippi-Alabama border, 2 to 4 feet expected. Intracoastal City to the mouth of the Atchafalaya River, 2 to 4 feet, and Lake Pontchartrain, 2 to 4 feet as well. Isolated maximum rainfall, according to the National Hurricane Center, could reach 25 inches.
Nathan, could we just recap the main headlines from the National Hurricane Center?
The key messages, they just
Barry.
scrolled by
Yep.
on our screen there. So there they are once again. Again, we have been talking about how rainfall will be one of the biggest threats from this. Anyone who's been watching the CDPS scale that Devon made, the Cyclone Destruction Potential scale, will have noted that the rain factor is by far the most potentially damaging out of all of the parameters that we look at. We also look at storm size and wind speed, and that's taking it on the forecasted landfall intensity. So rainfall is by far the biggest threat, and that is probably what we really should be focusing on more than anything else. I think everyone here agrees. But of course, along those coastal regions, the wind will get up and the storm surge will also have an impact.
And what are the percentages, or what are we saying about the percentages of Barry reaching hurricane status?
We have put it at the bottom of our screen. It comes along every so often. I think we gave it 45%, something like that. So it's
45, yeah.
It's almost a coin toss at the minute for hurricane status. It was higher chance early today or last night, wasn't it? And those chances have decreased a little bit.
The National Weather Service, Austin, San Antonio, they just put out a Twitter posting saying that Tropical Storm Barry may briefly achieve hurricane strength before moving on to the Louisiana coast by Saturday morning, and little to no impacts currently expected for south central Texas, but they advise to continue monitoring.
Yeah, if anything, it's just going to make it even hotter and drier here.
Over here, it's just going to be just increased swells and rip currents, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Alright, will there be any impacts to western North Carolina? If so, what's the main threat?
It's too far to the east. I would say no.
Way too far.
Yeah.
Should
Maybe
Houston
some
still
rain,
watch
but-
this?
I mean, if you're on the western side of Houston, I wouldn't. But if you're on the eastern side, I would. Because you may see some small effects from Barry, but I wouldn't count on the center passing over Houston.
Another question there, would the levees possibly break?
I
Not
don't
very
think
likely
so.
at all.
Probably not.
I don't know much about that, but it wouldn't seem as though they would crack
Well,
under a tropical storm.
According to the officials, sorry for interrupting, David, but according to the officials, out of the 120 levees that they have, only 2 of them are not working. All the rest of them are working fine.
Alright.
Yeah, they shouldn't break.
Any update on the recon mission?
They're
Let me
getting
get-
into the center.
Let's see. Yeah, they're just kind of circling around the center right now, and they're probably about to make a pass right in probably an hour or so, or during the next hour or so. So, and winds are starting to decrease on the latest run. It's kind of tough. Okay, so it's just south of the mouth of the Mississippi, so that would be closer to where the main vortex is. So I think that's what they're trying to intercept right now and see if that's the dominant center or if something else is kind of taken over. So that'll be interesting to see. And it just disappeared. Oh, there it is.
Can't see it on your screen at the minute, Hank, unfortunately. Hopefully we'll get it at some point. David, go.
Unrelated to the Tropical Storm Barry, there is other storm activity taking place. New York City is under a severe thunderstorm warning, and one media outlet up in Baltimore is saying that there are over 6,000 customers currently without electricity due to severe storm activity.
Yes, indeed. Don't know why it's not working at the minute, Hank, which is a shame. Everything stopped working here. Great. Alright.
Your screen froze up, Hank.
The end of the hour. This is Force 13 Live. We will continue with at least another hour on the latest for Barry. I was thinking we would run for quite a while tonight if the storm was strengthening, but it doesn't appear to be doing so, does it?
No, not
Which
at
I'm
all.
certainly relieved by, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
think we're going to run
yes.
for just another hour here, and then we're going to finish up the coverage for tonight, considering how it hasn't materialized as badly as we thought it would so far, but tomorrow and onwards could still be the main times that we'll be watching this, especially Saturday for that rainfall. Alright, we're going to take a short break here. We'll be back again at the top of the next hour in just a few minutes' time on the other side of this. Stay tuned, send in your questions, start your message with Force 13 all in text. We'll be back shortly. Coverage continues in a moment. You can follow Force 13's outlets, the website force13.com, our YouTube page, youtube.com/Force13, on Facebook under the same name, Force13, and our Twitter handle, it's @Force13 if you wish to get in touch. You can also add Force13 on Skype and my personal account on Discord, Fool13, at extension 9094. You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Welcome to our second hour of coverage on Force 13 Live for Tropical Storm Barry, which you can see on this imagery here, and you can also see the warnings that are in effect. A hurricane warning for Intracoastal City to Grand Isle, Louisiana is the main headline that came into effect an hour ago. Joining me again tonight is the team. We'll introduce them shortly. My name is Nathan Foy. You can send in messages to us at any time by starting your message with Force 13 or in text in the chat section on our YouTube stream. Also covering live streaming on Facebook tonight is David. Hello David, how are you?
Good to be here for the second hour. Yes, we are simulcasting onto Facebook. A special welcome to a viewer from Bangladesh and
of all places.
to the
Wow.
team. Yep. And as a weather worker, please tell me the maximum output of Tropical Storm Barry.
Yeah, that's sort of what everyone wants to know. We'll get down to that shortly, I'm sure. In this hour, we are also joined by Thomas, Ryan, Ethan, and Isaac. Good evening to you all.
Hello.
Everyone.
Hello.
Hello
Good
there.
evening.
Yes, hi, hello, greetings, bonjour.
With some visible imagery right now is Thomas. Take it away.
Yeah, so this is some visible imagery of what is now Tropical Storm Barry, and we currently have it at 45. I'd say that's a good estimate. You can see Barry, I think, best on visible imagery. Infrared imagery is going to show very strong cloud tops here on the southern side, but what I think visible imagery shows best is all these cirrus clouds to the north, and really just this air mass up here. You can see air is very, very dry on the northern side of Barry, and you can also see an even drier air mass gradually coming down southward. You can see it's kind of along this front. This front's going to be what picks up Barry relatively soon, over into the next 72 hours or so. It may not be that, it may be farther backward, but there's going to be a front. It's going to pick up Barry, and it's going to bring it into Louisiana, probably farther east than what I just drew, but still generally in that direction. But you can see a clear circulation from Barry. It's still quite, and on the southern side, we can still see all this convection. In the center, and the wind field of tropical storm force winds itself is not very large. So what it really is indicative of is that Barry is not really being fully independent weather elements. So other elements of the weather, such as this mesoscale burst over here, such as the upper level high shearing it, all these different things are really having a lot of influence on it. So instead of Barry influencing its environment like a stronger storm would do, the environment is influencing it. So that's really what's going on right now. And you can see the shear actually, if you try to take a look at it, you can see the winds trying to curve around the system, and then you can actually see the southerly flow. You can see the easterly flow at the surface, the westerly flow. So you can see the competing wind shear.
Before we went on air tonight, Thomas, Nelson showed us the imagery outside of his place in New Orleans and how quite clear it was looking, just a few low-level clouds. Is there any inkling that this storm is coming along the coast there? I know we obviously had the events of yesterday, but it appears quite quiet up there right now.
Yeah, I mean, you can see a few overshooting tops here, which can be shown because these are being sheared, but there's not really much. You can see a few what looks like would be pop-up showers that are being sheared. But other than that, there's not much evidence saying that there's a tropical cyclone coming for the average Joe.
All right. Anyone else
There's
with
not
thoughts?
really any anywhere.
Well, currently on my screen, I have a combination of a satellite imagery of the Atlantic and the Eastern East Pacific. You can see the 93L, 96E there, but the main scene is, of course, Barry in the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, it's looking pretty bad, to be honest.
Barry, is
But,
that?
you know, yep. The contender stage in the Gulf
I
of
think
Mexico.
people expected more by now. You know, on an objective standpoint, I don't know whether it's, well, it must be behind schedule with regards to what NHC were originally predicting, because they've put down the forecast
Yeah.
intensity, haven't they?
Yes,
but
they have.
it's a very odd shape that it's got right now with that convective banding.
But,
It's
you
sort of
know,
like a V shape
models-
right now to the south of the circulation.
Yeah, but you know, models have been consistently showing that the storm will organize. We just, at this point, only time will tell. I mean, it's got to get all that dry air out of there if it even wants to become a hurricane.
And that's what we're looking at on this satellite imagery right now. I love this kind of imagery. This is visible and water vapor hybrid imagery, where you can see the convective tops really blowing up there, but also that dry air on the northern side. And
Yeah, I mean,
big blow
you
up
can see
along
it
the
all.
coast of Texas there as well. We were commenting on that just before the stream as well, that it was producing how many strikes per minute? I think it was 450.
Was it like strikes per minute?
Sorry, not strikes per minute.
450, did you just say?
No,
I think
not
it was
that
around
many.
45.
I'm sorry. Factored it by 10.
45,
45 strikes
yeah.
per minute. Yeah,
It's
that
like,
would be quite
whoa,
crazy.
man.
45 strikes per
Yeah.
minute in that particular cell.
Yeah, and we are seeing someone in the chat saying this kind of looks like a front.
It's not a
No.
front. It's not a front. It doesn't look like.
This is nowhere near to being a front. This storm is a bona fide tropical cyclone. It has a closed center, and it has convection around the center.
Alright, let's see if we've got any questions. Will the northern side get convection tonight?
No. Oh,
I don't know about that. I
doesn't
don't.
look like it.
No
I
sign of
don't think
yet.
it. Well, obviously, there's no northern side convection now,
But
but
it
if
is extending
you take
up there on the western side.
I mean, here it
I mean,
is a few hours ago, and you can see the convection is nowhere near as bona fide on the southern side. And then you can see much
Oh,
later down to the current frame, it's
I'm
much
afraid-
bona fide,
oh,
and you can see it extending north.
Right.
You can actually see technically on
Thomas,
the
could
northern
you
side.
just
of
show
the-
us that sequence again, because we missed it?
Yes. So you can see the system at this point in time when we're at about peak heating of the day. And you can see that there are some gaps in the convection. It's not a very well-organized or, I guess, moist on the southern side. And by the time we get to the end of this loop, you can see it's much more bona fide. There's a lot more convection blowing up, and you can see it is gradually extending north. So I think by tomorrow morning, you can see a little bit of convection wrapping around the northern side. It depends on how much this deepens. The more it deepens, the more it's going to be able to do that. So we'll see what does happen. I think that this is deepening right now, according to Recon. At least previous
that's
Recon
true.
missions have seen it deepening. So given those indications, I'd say that it's got a shot.
Yeah, it
got a
definitely is possible that it could develop some
I think it might have
convection.
dropped out.
I think he did drop out. Alright, well, that
And
does
a
happen
nat-
sometimes. David?
National Weather Service has put out a treader posting re the flooding, and I put out a chart and I posted it in the room, and they're saying, well, people have to be prepared, and I'm going to indicate that it's only going to get worse, and people should avoid travel.
Well, certainly if those thunderstorms continue blowing up very close to the coast now, and that could be the beginning of our next rain event from this storm. I think, was Isaac going to say something there?
Yeah, I was. Over in Houston, actually, right now, the extreme western outer bands of it are. There's a severe thunderstorm warning
Yep.
near Houston right now as we speak
We can
because
see
of
it on
the
this
outer
imagery.
bands.
It's quite clear there's a big blow up there.
Yeah, some of the outer bands are starting to make it into extreme southeastern Texas here, so they may get some rain from this and outer region effects. But so far, I don't think the models are really going over for the southeastern track at this point. It's mainly Louisiana that's going to get the brunt of it, and they don't need any more rain at this point in time. But I'm afraid they're going to get more of it as this moves on towards there.
All right, we have some
And-
questions. What would happen if Barry went farther south than expected?
It would go to a more western track, depending on if it intensifies quick enough.
I mean, if it heads farther south, it would do. It's running out of time to do that. I don't think it's going to. If it were to go farther south, it could go slightly farther westward. Maybe at the farthest west it could get. I think the Texas, Louisiana, as a hurricane, maybe a 85 mile an hour.
Just saw a comment saying that it's a Colin. No,
It's
No.
better
it's
than
not a Colin.
Better than Colin.
Colin did not have this does. Big difference.
Nathan.
Look at that circulation, much better than Colin. Yes, David.
Exactly.
Just following on to what Isaac has said, National Weather Service Miami has got a special marine warning in place for the possibility of water spouts. And also, one of the agencies, I'm not sure, it might be the NHC, saying that Barry is slow moving.
Well, yeah,
If that's-
I could have told you
Well,
that.
slow
slow.
moving, which means that it's it could deepen further.
Well, it depends. I mean, you have this sort of balancing act between movement. If it's over very warm waters, slow movement could cause more intensification, but if it moves too slowly, then upwelling will cause weakening.
And I believe that I cited something a few hours ago about dry air.
Yep, dry air quite visible on this screen here. It's marked by the sort of yellow faded colours that are coming in there. Those are dry slots. And as you can see, the northern side of Barry is dominated by that at this time.
Yeah, that's why there's not that much convection going on its northern side and on its southern side.
But there are
it's the
some
exact
massive
opposite.
blow-ups right now on the western side here.
Yeah,
Hey.
I'm starting to see that.
Just on the Renata, the rainfall is critical. What the forecasters are saying about the amount of inches, it could even be higher. There'll probably be areas that could see more rain than what's being predicted.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you because what's been going on and what's going to continue to go on up until landfall is you're going to see higher and higher rain contours as there's more certainty to where this is going to make land. A couple days ago, the maximum rainfall amount was about 10 inches. Then it was yesterday about 15, and now we're so to see a couple of places that could say 25 inches or so wouldn't be overly surprising. And in local areas, obviously, you're going to have locally higher amounts than what's forecasted at this large of a scale.
Now, what about the risk of tornadoes?
We'll get on to that in a moment. I've got a lot more questions at the minute. One of them will include the tornado threat. First of all, though, where did it go now? Lost it. How high is the wind shear around Barry right now?
Wind shear right now is decent.
About
Yeah.
10 knots, isn't it?
Yeah, about 10, 15 knots. 10, 15 knots, even 20 knots. around it. All around it, there's some winds here of about 40 to 30 on the outer fringes of it.
Indeed. Okay, what else have we got here? Yes, a comment saying that this thing might not even get to hurricane anymore and asking for our clarification. Well, that is the National Hurricane Centre's position now, predicting only 70 miles an hour, although there is debate whether it might get to 75 between one of their forecast points.
Correction to that. I did read through the forecast discussion. I forgot to get back to you. They are predicting a 75 mile an hour hurricane. Yes, they are still predicting a hurricane.
All right, well, that makes sense. So they are still predicting just the tiniest stint as a hurricane.
Yes.
So we'll see what happens. What's the chance of landfalling in Texas?
Pretty unlikely at this.
And
I'd say less
the
than 5%.
acknowledgement on the rest of that message.
It's definitely possible, but the window for that is closing as the time goes on. If it doesn't get its act together, within the next 24 hours or so, that scenario is going to get even more out of the window. So it really depends how fast it decides to strengthen. The more faster it decides to strengthen, the more northwest it's going to go. If it decides to kind of just maintain or slowly strengthen the next 24 hours or so, it's probably going to be more towards Louisiana. But that's certainly not out of the cards, but it's unlikely. Go ahead, David.
Thomas, they're showing us a wind shear map. As we look at that right now, we'll take some more questions here. Will 93L be like Beryl?
No,
No,
I don't see it at this point in time.
Will Barry wash out the dry air?
No. It's too weak.
Yeah.
It depends. Around like from about 6 to 7 or 8, it could blow up some more convection and try to cover it up. But it really depends on where that convection decides to form. So I'm kind of iffy about that.
Are tornadoes likely with this storm? So here's the opportunity to talk tornado threat.
Yes and no, if that makes sense. There aren't going to be any big violent tornadoes, but odds are pretty good for 1 or 2 spin-ups at least.
Yeah.
To occur as this moves into land. So as Barry moves into land, what you're going to see is, especially on the eastern side, which is where it looks like most of the convection is going to be, it's going to be the outer spiral bands where those tornadoes are produced. So it's not going to be as this is impacting, it's going to be up to even 24 hours before, and you'll see those spiral bands capable of producing tornadoes.
Yeah, currently on my screen, I have the Storm Prediction Center's Day 1 convective outlook. As you see, we have a slight risk across other parts of the country where we're really focusing on the marginal risk down in Louisiana. If I click this over to the tornado risk, you can see today we have a 2% tornado risk. So with some thunderstorms moving through the area across Louisiana and the southern portion of Mississippi today, we could see some tornado warnings. We haven't seen any yet today. And moving on to the Day 2 outlook, we have a slight risk across this area as the tornado threat is increased, nothing on the probabilistic. But the general tornado threat is once again going to be in the same area as today. And then moving towards tomorrow, the tornado threat extends a little bit more to the north with a marginal risk for that.
All right. Would it be inappropriate to compare the rainfall forecast to Harvey is a question we get here.
I would think so. Harvey dropped like 60 inches of rain. This is only going to be like half of it.
Well, only. It's gonna drop a lot of rain, and don't get me wrong, like Harvey, it is going to be a big flooding threat. The difference is this isn't going to be like Harvey was with lots of convection and drop 60 inches of rain. It's going to be dropping maybe 20, which is going to still cause significant flooding, but this isn't going to be some sort of major emergency event to the extent that Harvey was. It's still obviously a major emergency for places on the eastern side of this. People need to be watching this closely. I'd still say that this is going to be quite bad because flooding's already occurring and there's only going to be more of it because of Barry, but widespread flooding can be expected.
Yeah, this is not going to compare to Harvey when it comes to nothing.
Sorry, I want to try and get as many questions in as possible here, so we're going to move things along. Where was I going to go just then? I was going to do something? Okay, maybe not. Do we think the National Hurricane Center should update more? I don't think it's very necessary for them to do that at the minute.
I mean, they're already doing 3-hourly updates.
They
They
are.
usually do it. They have issue watches or warnings, so I think it's fine. It's not like the storm's like rapidly intensive. It's just
Yes.
yeah.
I've remembered. Does anyone have the latest on the recon plane?
Oh,
Let's see.
yes.
Whilst we wait for that,
Here's-
will 93L become Chantal? Probably not.
Oh yeah, they're in the storm now. They're finding flight. The NOAA 2 mission is in the storm. They're finding winds so far. It looks up to about 40 knots or so flight level winds.
Seeing up to 45. This thing.
Oh, I guess
Not
mine's
seeing
not as
too
updated.
I'm
unexpected.
seeing barbs of about 40 at the moment. On the tropical tidbits color table, you can see the greens there, but if you read the barbs themselves, it's 40 knots. I'm finding 40.
Yeah. Okay.
Not
Well,
unexpected.
no, I'm seeing here it's almost at 5. I guess it could.
I think you're referring to the flight level wind. The flight level wind is about 44 knots or so, but the surface wind, what they're finding so far, is about
that's
40
what I
knots.
was referring to. The flight level.
I got you.
This wind
Gotcha.
is about 50.
I see.
All right. Will the northern dry air go away? Is another question we get here.
No.
It's hard to say.
I don't know whether people are begging for it to go away or not. I'm certainly not. Anyway, will the storm affect Mexico at all? Any
I mean,
rain
some of the
at all?
No.
Nope.
No.
Not
them-
a sprinkle.
Some of
Maybe
them-
there's some increased rip currents or waves, but that's about it, in my opinion, at the moment.
Ethan?
Some of the moisture might be able to get down there. Brief amounts may be able to get
Let's have
there.
a little
Western
look.
portions of Mexico.
How
If
far
it
is it to the
rises.
Yucatan? Yeah, one of the bands, southern bands, is reaching the Yucatan tip right now. But
you know, if
very little
if
effects from this system. Having said that,
Yeah,
I
if-
was on the Yucatan Peninsula in 2016 when Hurricane Earl went past and nothing happened, and a tiny squall line 2 days later was the worst, was almost like hurricane conditions. So expect the unexpected when things go passing by. Alright, let's see, some more questions. Have you noticed the convective flare-ups on 93L? We've not really been
Yes,
looking, I've got to say. We've not really been looking.
I can pull up some imagery from it now.
I mean, it doesn't look fantastic. I mean, yes, there's convection flaring, but the circulation that would produce a TC is not where the convection is. So it's not really fantastic.
No.
I don't think it's going to develop.
It probably will.
I'd give it 10% at most if I'm feeling generous. Right now, I'd give it.
Interesting.
Yeah, probably like 10%.
Yeah, currently on my screen, I have imagery for 93L up, and it looks terrible.
Yep, I've been
There's
showing
abundance of
both of them here on the screen. Alright then, let's go back to the more pressing matter. If you've just joined us, let me reveal the latest information if you're still waiting on it. A hurricane warning was put into effect an hour and a half ago now for the coast of Louisiana from Intracoastal City to Grand Isle. A tropical storm warning for the mouth of the Pearl River to Grand Isle and Lake Pontchartrain and Lake Maurepas, including metropolitan New Orleans. Intracoastal City to Cameron as well. A storm surge warning for the mouth of the Atchafalaya River to Shell Beach. A storm surge watch for Shell Beach to the Mississippi-Alabama border and the mouth of the Atchafalaya River to Intracoastal City and Lake Pontchartrain. A hurricane watch for the mouth of the Mississippi River to Grand Isle and Intracoastal City to Cameron, and a tropical storm watch for east of the mouth of the Pearl River to the Mississippi-Alabama border. A reminder of expected storm surges. The mouth of the Atchafalaya... I keep saying that wrong. The Atchafalaya River to Shell Beach, 3 to 6 feet. Shell Beach to the Mississippi-Alabama border, 2 to 4 feet. Intracoastal City to the mouth of the Atchafalaya River, 2 to 4 feet. Lake Pontchartrain, 2 to 4 feet as well. Rainfall amounts in some isolated areas could reach 25 inches. And that is the latest. As we continue to look at the imagery here, and the National Hurricane Center expect that the storm will make landfall during the day on Saturday. Let's bring back up the National Hurricane Center track map again, because it's been a while since we've shown you that. Of course, if you haven't seen it yet, there it is. And you can see those warnings as well marked out on the map. So they are expecting briefly for the storm to reach hurricane status just after the third S dot, just as it's making landfall pretty much. Interesting to note, the cone is pretty small, so some parts, 1 or 2 little areas of Louisiana could be ruled out for tropical storm conditions. Indeed, west of Cameron doesn't have a tropical storm or any watch or warning in effect. And then the National Hurricane Center think that the remnants or the depression for Barry will then move into Arkansas and eventually towards the very southernmost part of Illinois via Missouri. Could pass over Thomas's house or Ethan's house.
Or both.
Or both.
Or neither.
Probably not my house.
And just to remind you as well, the National Hurricane Center are running with 40 miles per hour. We're a little higher at 45 on our latest estimates. And do you think they'll up it with these recon findings or not?
I think they
possible.
will. Because it looks like that they've 40 knot winds at the surface. Mistaken. So I think that it's very 5.
I
Stop, Dave.
oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's likely too. I mean, they're non-suspect readings of 40 knot surface winds from the NOAA plane. So either what I see is going to happen, either they maintain it at 40 or they increase it to 45. But I want to say they're probably going to increase it to 45, knowing that they found surface winds indicating 45-mile-an-hour winds.
And here's another illustration of where those where the rains are going to be distributed. So the dark purple violet sort of color there, 20 inches or more. That is a large amount of rain for part of southeastern Louisiana. The pink area there, 15 inches or higher, and the orange area is 6 inches, which extends up the Mississippi Valley quite some way, even possibly into Tennessee, and 4 inches extending even further north than that as well. So I don't know how much rain in these areas would be flood inducing, guys. I don't know what you think, whether flooding threats will be restricted to just Louisiana or stretch far beyond there. You fill me in on that. I don't really know.
On what?
Flooding.
The flooding threat. I mean, we know about
yeah.
Louisiana already, but beyond there, is there a real risk with those rain values?
Yeah, there is. And I mean, if we actually take a look at the map you already have on the screen, we can kind of see that. We can see the 6 to 10 inch contour going all the way up through Mississippi, a good chunk of the state actually,
Yep.
and even a good chunk of Arkansas. So it's really still going to be a concern up farther north, and there is a chance that those higher rainfall total contours, such as the 10 to 15 inch one could extend farther north with time. I mean, we're seeing with time more and more rainfall being expected. So we'll see what happens, but I think some of that's going to go up with time, and as I think more forecast confidence
I find this
will
very
occur.
interesting as well, that this chart is quite different to the numbers that we're giving out on the rainfall, which will appear on the left-hand bar in a moment. Two differences with that. So first of all is the numbers themselves, but this graphic is a 7-day rainfall forecast, and the one that will appear on the left in a minute is a 5-day estimate, which predicts 16 inches of rain for New Orleans in the next 5 days. However, this who produces this? The NOAA graphic is only saying maybe 12 to 14.
I mean, either way, it's quite significant rainfall, and I mean, it's really going to be down to where Barry goes. So if Barry does take the track that we expect, then yeah, your numbers are going to be more accurate. But if it takes a, I guess, more NHC-like approach, then again, the numbers are probably going to be more like the weather predictions. I mean, it really just comes down to very minute differences in track. I mean, the GFS is predicting different numbers than this track. All the models really are predicting different numbers from each other in locations that are close to each other. So it's not because there isn't much certainty on how much rain is going to fall. It's just where that rain is going to fall, because it's going to be a very precise nugget, if you will, of land that's going to that high rainfall. So, for example, maybe about this size will be maybe the size of the nugget where the heaviest rain will fall.
So we continue our coverage here on Force 13 Live, and we're so, I suppose, I guess humbled in a way to see people's support for the work that we have been doing, not just today, but for the last 7 years since we started Storm Updates on the channel back in the summer of 2012. It's been a remarkable journey, and we really hope that we are doing a good job tonight, as we aim to do all the time here, answering your questions as we go along as well. If you would also like to help out with our work in terms of actually being part of what we do, you can start by joining our Discord server, which is linked underneath the bottom of this video in the description, and be part of the community that we are continuing to establish. But this is another part as well, even just in the comments section, by highlighting us to things every so often too. If you've got any more questions right now, send in messages. We're staying on the air for another 25 minutes. We're going to finish up after that because not too much is changing with Barry. There will be a tropical weather bulletin, as per usual, that will be going out at what time would that be central now? 7 o'clock?
7
7 o'clock,
Central
yeah.
Time. There's a tropical weather bulletin going out on the Force 13 channel, and maybe there'll be some more updates later on in the evening. We'll just have to play it by ear. But the way this is developing, it's still developing slowly, isn't it, guys?
It's been very, very slow.
And if it remains slow, then that can only be welcome news.
Oh yes, and, I mean,
As long as it
as
doesn't,
I've already been saying.
as long as it doesn't park over New Orleans and deliver tons of rain.
Yeah.
It's already going to deliver tons of rain
Nathan,
either way.
I hate to do it, but I've got breaking news.
If you've got breaking news, then you got to go and break it.
Report of a earthquake in Spain.
An earthquake in Spain.
Yeah, I don't know what magnitude, but that is being reported.
All right, we'll look into it.
Right, we're here to talk about Barry, though. So we may talk about that another time. But here we go. So
I'm not seeing anything relating to that just yet, but if it is a severe earthquake, we'll let you know. In the meantime, we are looking at Tropical Storm Barry on the screen, which is surrounded to the north by dry air, but those convective bursts are still persisting, especially to the west, and you'll note quite a severe thunderstorm over the eastern part of Texas, not too far from Houston now. Is Isaac still there? Any update on that?
Yeah, it's gone down to a special marine warning, and they're kind of. I mean, the rain's still there, but it's weakening now. For the most part, it's offshore, but there's a few scattered showers near Beaumont and Port Arthur that are going on, firing up. But yeah, not much.
All right. I'm still confused about this earthquake news. We can't confirm that at all, David. So we'll just see it. We're not going to mention that again unless we get any further news.
That's fair enough, but it's from an official source.
Okay, well, I'm not seeing anything to do with that just yet. All right, there's probably some more questions by now. Let's see what we have here. Do you think the rain will be more or less than what we saw with Tropical Storm Allison?
Less.
Less bad.
Yeah, Allison produced like what, 45 inches of rain, something like that. Was it? It was like 40, 45, and this will probably produce like 20. So, no, this won't be. This won't drop as much rain as Allison did back in 2000.
Does anyone think it will be a Category 2?
No.
Question
No.
that came in there.
No, I don't think so. It's too late for any really
It
much
just,
of a
you know,
possibility for
I
Cat
mean,
2.
when we were tracking Michael, for instance, you just knew that it was going to really blow up, but you just can't see it happening at the minute with this storm at all.
Yeah, it's just you just can't even see. Like, I can't even really see this hurricane.
Like, even if it becomes
I mean-
a hurricane, it's probably going to be one of the ugliest looking hurricanes we've seen, and they
Yeah, it's not.
tend to form in this
It's
area.
gonna be a pretty hurricane. It's gonna be a weak one at that. I mean, it's still gonna be a hurricane, but it's something to take seriously. But it's not going to be like, you know.
There have been
I
some
can't
weird
see
looking
this.
hurricanes in the northern Gulf of Mexico over the years.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if it's going to intensify, it'll probably top at like 80, 85 max.
Yeah, I don't think many people will be putting anything on Category 2 on this right now. Alright, let's see, what do we have here? What percentage do we give Barry to reach hurricane status before landfall? So, you saw there, 45% is what we're giving it to get Cat 1 at any time at present.
That is true, and I think that that's pretty accurate. I mean, honestly, I don't believe it's going to become a hurricane at this. I'm going to go with a 70-mile-an-hour peak, but I do think that it's going to be close. I mean, it's going to be very border. So whether it's 70 or 75 miles an hour, you know, that does make the difference of whether it's a hurricane or not. It's not going to make a lick of difference when it comes to impacts, honestly. It's a 5-mile-an-hour difference in wind speed.
It's a 5-mile-an-hour difference. I mean, you gotta understand, it's a 5 difference. It might be a different category on the Saffir-Simpson scale, but it's a 5-mile-per-hour difference. Very insignificant, naturally insignificant.
No, it has a historical significance. It separates Beaufort Force 11 and 12.
Well, yeah, again, that's a scale, and it's just a 5-mile-an-hour difference. I mean,
When it comes to the overall impacts that you're going to receive from a tropical cycle, winds of 70 to 75 isn't going to make much of a difference, just as winds of 155 to 160. The reason why
Although you
those
could
are
argue the
argued
difference
so much.
between 155 and 160 is even less.
Well, yeah,
yeah,
It's 70
this
to
line
75.
was-
because it's a smaller percentage increase.
Right.
relative to the previous speed.
Right.
Um,
Are we being
Going
pedantic
back-
now? Okay, let's move on.
yeah, I don't want. That's
Isaac,
a
go
topic
ahead.
for another story. Recon, still soaring
Yep.
winds of about, service winds of about 40 knots or so, maybe a tiny bit lower than that. But just, I would say they're probably going to upgrade it to 45 miles per hour.
45
But
miles an hour.
again,
I'm
it's the NHC,
thinking-
so they named Colin, so we'll
And that's
see.
what we've put it down as all day, 45 miles per hour. Initially based off an ASCAT reading. But now
And
it
you
looks
can-
like it'll be verified by Recon.
And now there's a new recon plane heading into it, a lower level reconnaissance plane heading into recon, but it just left the base, so it's probably going to be an hour or two before it gets to the storm.
Indeed. All right.
Uh,
Well, we won't be here by then. We're here for another 20 minutes, so if you want to get your questions in to us right now, send them in thick and fast. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. We're here to take questions. Let's see what we got then. Is it fair to compare this storm to Isaac 2018, except for location?
2018?
I'm a bit
2018?
confused. I thought
mean
you might have
2012?
said. I thought you might have said 2012 because that one did hit Louisiana as a Category 1. But he
Yeah,
said
that one.
2018.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 2018 didn't even really impact land that much. Like, it wasn't even in the Gulf of Mexico, period.
Yeah, I mean, that was like well out in the MDR, Eastern Caribbean. I mean, it did get to 75 miles per hour, and it was a hurricane for a very period. That's really the only comparison
I think
could
the bigger
see.
comparison is Isaac of 2012, if you want to.
Yeah, but Isaac of 2012, which sort of I don't know. I mean, Isaac came up like. Was it in the? I think it developed in like the Western Caribbean, or was it the Eastern Caribbean?
It
like
made its first
no, it hit
landfall on Haiti, didn't it?
on Haiti. Yeah, it hit Haiti, and then I think it hit Cuba, and then it went on to Louisiana. I think.
And then this is different in a way because Isaac stalled for about a day or so, like right before it made landfall. Kind of just sat around and then started moving on. This one's not going to do that. I mean, if it did
Well,
do it,
we still don't know, actually.
Yeah, well, if it would do it now, I think it would be likely around this time. But it's not gonna. I don't think it is. It's gonna go on and do whatever it's gonna do to Louisiana.
I mean, we still look at this. I'm just looking towards the center of the storm on this imagery, and its motion must be very slow.
National Hurricane Center, guys,
Just a few miles
as
an hour.
they've put out a posting, Nathan, as Barry strengthens, hazardous waves are building in the Gulf of Mexico, and they've come out with a chart on the forecasted wave height, peak wave heights over 20 feet.
Is that? Wait, are you looking at peak wave heights of 20?
Yep, that's for Friday
Oh.
evening.
Oh, that's you meaning like inland. I was like, what are you talking about?
Gulf of Mexico,
Yeah, that's
wave
that's,
height, forecast 20 feet, over 20 feet.
Yeah, it's over. It's
Yeah,
over water
in-
there.
over water. Yeah, if that was on land, that would be very concerning.
Yeah.
to say.
I was about to.
Please.
I just see here 20 feet, and I'm just like, whoa.
No,
It's all
no,
good,
it's
though.
not going to get that high. That would be a bit crazy.
Then we consider the storm surge factor.
Yeah, storm surge is only going to be like what, 3 to 5 feet? Is that what the National Hurricane Center's?
What did we say yesterday? 3 to 6 feet.
3 to 6 feet, yes.
3 to 6. Okay, 3 to 6.
Yeah, there's some isolated parts of it.
And whatever the high tide's going to be in the coastal regions. That's
kinda
something
too
I haven't
early to
looked at.
Tell what
High
time
tide.
it's going.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on what time is it going to make landfall. I mean, it's kind of too early to say. But I mean, what are we saying for like landfall? I know it's going to probably be sometime Saturday.
Yes, probably local time, late morning.
Late morning. like early afternoon. That's what I've been seeing.
I mean, you know, that could change. The timing is something that does jump about as well, especially when we are still. Where are we now? We're on Thursday evening, so we are just less than 2 days away, just over 36 hours. Things could still change a lot in that time, especially if it continues moving with a southerly component.
Yeah,
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
The southerly component is kind of strange, and I mean, obviously, forward speed is very slow at the moment, but the southerly component could allow for more intensification, which I know it's kind of getting a little, I guess, annoying, if you will. At least for me, it is. You know, there are signs that are saying like how it looks right now. Like, no, this isn't going to intensify much. This is going to head up north. And then you have other signs like the fact this is going farther south than expected, and the fact that it's moving a lot slower than expected.
Well, I'm seeing
At
something else
least
right
at this
now.
time yesterday.
I mean, it's
That
very easy
could.
to just watch the satellite imagery as every new frame comes in now with the very rapid imagery from Ghost 16, and you sort of lose sight of the full story. You look back throughout the last few hours, the southwestern and western side has built up quite a bit with convection compared to earlier today.
Yeah, it certainly
Yeah.
has. I mean, it is strengthening. It's the rate at which it's going to strengthen that's
Yeah, the,
trying to be determined.
yeah, the models kind of forecasted around this time for it to start increasing in convection a little bit, and they're forecasting it to start forming closer to the center later tonight or maybe early tomorrow, but that's to be seen at this point.
Again, a very interesting shape that those clouds are producing at this time, and still some flare-ups occurring. Daylight is just about fading over the region now. Well, a little bit longer to go yet, but
Yeah.
it's on its way out. Again, we haven't shown it much this hour, so let's just take you back with the latest from the National Hurricane Center. These are their key messages. A danger of a life-threatening storm surge inundation along the coast of southern and southeastern Louisiana, where storm surge warning is in effect. The highest storm surge inundation is expected between the mouth of the Atchafalaya River and Shell Beach. Residents in these areas should listen to any advice given by local officials. The slow movement of Barry will result in a long-duration, heavy rainfall and flood threat along the central Gulf Coast and inland through the lower Mississippi Valley through the weekend into early next week. Flash flooding and river flooding will become increasingly likely, some of which may be significant, especially along and east of the track of the system. And hurricane conditions are expected along a portion of the coast of Louisiana where a hurricane warning has been issued. Residents in these areas should rush their preparations to completion as tropical storm conditions are expected to arrive in the warning area Friday morning. So that's very soon indeed. Running out of daylight. That is the track forecast there for Tropical Storm Barry from the National Hurricane Center at their last update at 4 p.m. They'll be doing an intermediate advisory in just over an hour's time, followed by another full advisory at 10 p.m. Central Time. So that might also be interesting. You can also note there as well the wind field on the National Hurricane Center's cone. That orange zone quite away on the eastern and southeastern side, which is interesting because earlier they were saying it was along the western side, if I'm not mistaken. Which I found a bit odd, but certainly ASCAT and Recon showing that it is on a lot of the tropical storm force winds are on the eastern side. And then you look at that track map there, it's a gradual curve towards the northeast, but is it? If it's moving a little bit south at the minute, we'll have to wait and see. That's the arrival time, and this is the tropical storm force wind speed probabilities on the map, and we'll leave that there for a while. 70% along some coastal regions at this time. Recon update?
Oh yeah, I do have a recon update here. So it looks like that they are really starting to find some winds here. I think they're gonna upgrade this to 40 knots. It looks like recon has found 40-knot winds pretty consistently, really. Flight level winds almost up to 50 knots, but looks like that'd be near 40 near the surface. And it looks like it's gone through the storm for the most part. Where it found those strongest winds, it looks like was on the southeastern side.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, and you can see wind barbs there also being a rather clear indication of that. So,
Just clarify what
And-
they are there. The screen resolution isn't great. 45 knots?
45 knots is those yellows there. They're all 45 knots. I'm finding one barb at 50, but other than that, the rest of it's 45.
So that is flight level winds of 50 miles per hour.
Yep.
It's like between
Where's the
50
center?
and 60.
Yeah, that is true. Over 50 miles an hour.
Yeah, so, and with that being said, take a look at the extrapolation down to the surface. We're seeing multiple points where 40 knots can be found. So, at least from this, it looks like 45 miles an hour is going to be a pretty good intensity measurement.
Yep, and I would have to agree.
Alright, that's great. We have another few minutes here for any further comments or questions that you might have for us as we continue to look at the varying imageries that we have at our disposal here. Here's another one that we're trying to get up properly, the what they call the sandwich imagery on GOES 16, which is another visible infrared hybrid, which when fully loaded will look quite interesting.
Yeah, they have that for Himawari 8 as well too. It's a nice band.
Certainly.
Yeah.
So again, we will be running just for a few more minutes. We've been here for nearly 2 hours with the latest information on Barry. The original idea was that we would be staying much longer tonight, but there isn't a huge amount to talk about. As you can see, most of the bad stuff is remaining well offshore, and it's probably going to be tomorrow that we'll be getting more in-depth or extended coverage, and definitely as we enter Saturday, because that is going to be landfall day, we expect, unless something strange happens or the storm stalls offshore, and you can't rule that out given the area that it's in and how so many other storms, or quite a few other storms, have done so in the past. Still coming up as one of my potential analogues, Hurricane Danny in 1997, which stalled along the eastern part of Louisiana, and then eventually, was it Mississippi or even Alabama in the end that it made landfall?
It made landfall in Louisiana, I believe, but I think Alabama had I mean, Hurricane Danny of
made
1997
2
is
landfalls.
Hurricane Danny was actually that's a really good comparison because it was like slow moving. It happened around the same time of year. It made landfall in Louisiana as a hurricane, and did it go on to was it Mississippi? I think.
But
Yeah,
I don't know. It could have even it stalled off the coast, and then I think it may have even moved into Alabama for the landfall.
Yeah, that's what I don't know. It's but
It hovered, and then
I think
just, I don't know.
Let me see how much rain it produced because it was 36 inches on Dauphin Island from
that
Hurricane Danny of 1997.
Wow,
Yep.
that's interesting.
And it stalled over Mobile Bay
There you
for
go.
over 24 hours. So I will have a
That's
look
quite incredible.
at this right now. Let's have a look.
So,
Yeah, it did stall over Mobile Bay.
So that is another potential outcome, because it's happened before, or it could stall anywhere along the coast of Louisiana.
Don't think it's going to go to Mobile Bay, though.
I think, if it goes slower, then that would favour a more easterly track, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Depends really if it decides to strengthen more or just slowly. The faster it strengthens, probably the more northwest it would go. The slower, probably the more north.
Perhaps, but I'm thinking about... Well, we haven't actually really covered the steering elements of this system at the moment. I know it's being pulled from pillar to post, and I'm thinking if it's moving slowly, then, it's more likely to go further east eventually.
Yeah, I mean, timing is what's crucial with this, and I think that natural color can best show all the levels of the atmosphere. But what's really going on is we have this upper level high that's bringing southerly flow and southerly shear to the system. It's also pushing it south a little versus this weakness that's being produced by this trough, which is giving it a northward influence. What's going to happen is a front is associated with this trough that's going to be moving in, and that front is going to be what will ultimately pick it up and move it off. The question is, what's going to be able to keep influence on it for longer? Will the lower level front be able to get influence on it and take it up north, or will it get strong enough that the upper level southerly flow will really be of enough influence to keep it south for a longer and more extended period of time? I mean, that's the real question here as to what exactly is going to happen with this. Is the trough going to have more influence, or is the ridge going to have more influence? And what's really going to answer that is the strength of Barry. The weaker Barry is, the more influence that this trough is going to have.
Indeed. All right, we're just about to wrap up here. Any final thoughts from the team?
I would say personally, even though it may not be as strong as we think it'll be, it'll still have major flooding impacts for Louisiana here. If your local officials tell you to evacuate or to get out of your home, do it. Listen to them. They're trying to save your life and property. They're not there for the fun of it. So always listen to your local officials. If you don't have to evacuate, just make sure you're prepared. Just in case the power goes out, make sure you're prepared and have your food, everything ready to be without power for however long it's going to be without power. And pay attention to the local National Weather Service or your National Hurricane Center for the latest up-to-date information on this as time goes by.
David, anything?
Flooding is a key issue. I just cited a comment. We can't pump our way out of the water levels expected. This is New Orleans area.
And Ryan, a final word.
Yeah, make sure that you pay attention to the National Hurricane Center, your local weather service office, and listen to us, of course. Make sure you also listen to your local officials for the information on the storm.
All right then, well that concludes our coverage for tonight, at least our live coverage, or at least my live coverage. I don't know if the team might run another live event later on, I'm not sure about that, but not too much is changing with Barry right now. What still remains the fact is that a hurricane warning is in effect for a part of Louisiana, and a storm surge warning also. Those storm surges could reach 6 feet, and the rainfall amounts could end up being above 20 inches for parts of Louisiana over this weekend. The storm conditions could arrive as early as tomorrow morning in some areas. We'll have to wait and see what happens overnight with Barry. Tropical weather bulletin coming up in an hour's time on the Force 13 main channel. If you're watching live, an hour from now, tropical weather bulletin as per usual. That's it from now. Stay up to date on our social media platforms on Facebook and Twitter. Search Force 13 all in text, and of course you can enter our Discord server as well, linked underneath this video as you're watching now. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching, and good night.